All right, what up, y'all? Smalls here, back again. Welcome back to Black and Sick. First of all, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm coming to you from Chumash and Tongva land, otherwise known as Southern California. And we're here to explore the intersection of culture and faith, specifically shining a spotlight and centering those with the lived experiences at the center of Black and Sick. And like I said, I'm here with my co-host, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself.
What up, y'all? I am Surma Singh. My pronouns are he, him, and I'm coming to you from Karankawa land, otherwise known as Galveston Island, Texas. And I'm so stoked to be back. I'm really excited for the topic today.
Oh yeah, this is the one. Like, I feel like everything before here was like preparation just to get us here, right? So we could talk about this. I don't know too many marginalized people, at least in the US, who do not have an experience with tokenism. And before you ask, let's just get into what tokenism is, right? And I heard a really succinct definition of tokenism. Essentially, tokenism is diversity without inclusion, right? Now, we've been hearing a lot about diversity, equity, inclusion, and so much so that it's almost becoming a buzzword, right? You have whole corporations who have DEI departments or people who just specialize in this, DEI consultants or whatever, which fine, great, no problem. However, what I'm noticing a lot of times is when we start using these buzzwords, especially around the internet, we're really not breaking them down. We're not talking about what they mean, right? I remember when cultural appropriation kind of blew up on the internet, and then people just started accusing everybody of cultural appropriation for any and everything. And I was like, nope, that's not it. Nope, stop, slow down. Nope, that's not it, right? And so I just want to make sure we get there with tokenism. Most of this episode, really, I want to center your story, Surma. We've talked a lot about your story, your journey with SIKH. And even though we have a lot of parallels and they seem like they were happening about the same time, they're very different, where they are opposite in a lot of ways. We experienced a lot of the same things, but responded to them very differently. Before we get into that, tokenism is diversity without inclusion. What does that mean? Diversity. Well, you got different people, diverse experiences, diverse backgrounds, right? But what happens when you focus just on the surface level, just on their surface identity, just on the fact that it's a Black person in a space full of South Asians or Punjabi people, or even the reverse, honestly. It could be a white person in a room full of Black people or whatever, right? When we talk about diversity, we're talking about identity and things of that nature. But inclusion is the key word here, inclusion. And we have to remember that diversity is only beneficial as so far as we make sure that we are taking the whole person into account, that we are acknowledging that people are multidimensional, layered human beings, right? Full, complete human beings. People are different. People have different backgrounds, experiences, lived experiences, different beliefs, thoughts, values, all of those things, right? And we need to take all of that into account if we really want to talk about inclusion, if we really want to be inclusive. And in the same way that Surma and I are both Black, Surma and I are both Sikh, Surma and I are both queer, Surma and I are both former Christians, right? Surma and I are both college graduates. Disabled. Are you Gen Z or a millennial?
I'm a zillennial, so I'm that cusp.
Zillennial. Okay, so you're like right on the border. I'm a mid-millennial, right, as they call it. They got like elder millennials, but I'm like a mid-millennial, okay? And then so Surma is like right on the cusp, right? So we have a lot in common, and yet we are wildly different people. I think you would agree, right?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to mostly do, I'm going to talk a little bit, but I'm really going to set this up for Surma to give his experience, because I think it is profound. I think it is important. It is a large part of why we wanted to do this project in the first place, right? We wanted to make sure other Black Sikhs, other Black people didn't have the same experience. We wanted to sort of educate and bring awareness, because I think that when you start to hear some of the experiences, I don't think any of the people involved in these experiences were trying to be malicious or trying to be harmful or trying to be hurtful, right? I think they thought they were doing a good thing, and yet not so great things happened, right? Now, I think what might be a little different is our background. So I grew up in California, in the suburbs of California, the East Bay, to be more specific. Went to private school my whole life, from preschool to university. I was in a private school, okay? So did that, was very, very involved in sports and like softball and basketball, Girl Scouts, young entrepreneurs, this, all kinds of stuff. Like, I was constantly involved in a lot of stuff. I did a lot of extracurriculars, and I'm so grateful for that. My mom was very intentional about that. It is why I am an only child. She was very mindful of that. She was very intentional about the education that she wanted me to have and the experiences that she wanted me to have. She was very aware that, especially me being a Black woman, she did want a daughter. she kind of got that. She kind of understood that it was going to be a little bit tougher for me, right? And so she wanted to give me the best opportunities possible. And part of that was making sure I was well-rounded and had a wide range of diverse experiences. However, what that meant, in part, especially in California, is that I grew up in a lot of predominantly white spaces. It means I was the only in a lot of ways, right? From Girl Scouts to maybe my sports teams to the classroom in 6th grade, there was no other black kid in my class in the 6th grade. Even though I don't remember a lot of my childhood, I distinctly remember that, and I distinctly remember the 6th grade. I remember when I clearly understood that one of my teachers had some implicit bias, let's call it that. I won't use the big R word, right? We know that kind of scares people, but was clearly dealing with some implicit bias, and the other students recognized it, right? I wasn't the only one, because like Sorma said last time, when you're black or marginalized, the last thing you want to do is claim that it's race, because you know you're going to get pushback, you know you're going to get people saying you're too sensitive, you know you're going to get people saying you're playing the race card and blah, 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 blah. So you don't want it to be race, but after you exhaust all the other options and there's nothing left and it's clear as day, it is what it is. I remember starting a petition. Every kid in my class signed it. And long story short, because I want this to really focus more on Sorma's experience with SIKH, long story short, I was called into the office with my mom and told that if I ever accused a teacher of racism or anything like that ever again, I would be expelled post haste. No warning, no nothing. Long story short, I left that school. My point is, until I went to my HBCU, which as soon as I discovered that HBCUs were even a thing, I immediately knew that that's where I wanted to go, because the only time I was constantly like around other people who looked like me and was able to really revel in my blackness safely was either at church or amongst my family. And because I had a very different experience from a lot of other black people, not better, not worse, just different, a lot of times I couldn't relate. A lot of times I was sort of like picked on and made fun of. Whatever, I've been to therapy. I'm okay now. All of my friends are black. But I have a lot of experience being the token, and I did not want that anymore. So I went to an HBCU. We'll talk about that at another time. But that is the main reason that why when I discovered SIKH, I was like, BLACKxSIKH. Like immediately, just Googled. I was like, okay, this sounds like a good idea, but I've never seen a BLACKxSIKH. Do they exist? And I immediately started Googling. Thankfully, I found a few, and I knew that they existed. But I didn't find a lot of stuff. I didn't find a lot of information. And the few that I found, I would come to discover had been tokenized. Oh, dare I say it, they had been tokenized. So it seemed to me. It seemed clear to me at the time that they were sort of being tokenized in a way. And that their blackness was sort of like, they tried to like push it back. Like it was only relevant when it was beneficial to say, we have BLACKxSIKHs, right? Like it wasn't. Anyways, we'll get into that. But one of the people that I discovered when I first Googled SIKH and BLACKxSIKHs was a young man named Sorma Singh on YouTube. Watched some videos and was like, this is really cool, right? He was talking about his experience being a BLACKxSIKH, and I was like, okay. It was his experience online, seeing his experience, that made me feel a little bit more comfortable to go forward in this journey. Now, I messaged Sorma. Sorma never responded till like 2 years later. Come to find out, he never saw my message. Like, right? And it wasn't until we were at an event together. I don't even remember. I don't know if you remember the event, but Sorma saw me and was like, oh, another BLACKxSIKH. And I was like, yep. And then he came and messaged me and saw my original message from like 2 years earlier and was like, oh shit, like I didn't know you messaged me. And I was like, yep, it's just been 2 years. It's okay. It's fine. It's just been 2 years. No, it's fine. It's fine. But that is how we first met, like at an event. And I was like, yeah, I just been waiting, kind of fangirling a little bit, but it's fine, So when I say like, I'm glad I'm doing this with Sorma and that it's really a full circle moment, that's really what I mean. Seeing Sorma's content online is one of the reasons that I felt safe and a lot more comfortable to sort of pursue my journey with SIKH. And it's why, even though I didn't really want to do the interview with Kat Black, and why I've been trying to think of so many reasons to not do this project, that I sort of knew I had to, right? Like I felt like we needed to be what we needed when we first came to SIKH, and we need to take some time to improve some things, especially after hearing Sorma's story. So Sorma, talk to me a little bit about your experience with tokenism and SIKH. Where you want to start?
It's kind of traumatic for me. to bring it up, but I feel like it needs to be said, especially with seeing the influx of like just new Black Sikhs coming in. Because when we came into Sikhi, there just weren't a lot of us, and it's like every other day now I'm seeing a new.
I felt like we could name all of them at the time.
Yeah, we could definitely. I feel like we could count them on our hands and just name all of them. Now they're just coming from everywhere, and I feel like it's important that we kind of like take care of the babies and let them know you're gonna get this, and this. So but
this might happen, but you're gonna be all right.
Yeah. Without spending too much time on my initial introduction in the Sikh, trigger warning, self-harm, suicide. But I was, I could name the date and time that I converted to Sikh. It was July 1st, 2015 at 12:15 a.m. that I decided to follow Sikh because that was going to be the time that I was potentially going to take my own life. And as funny as it seems, as wild as it seems, I was actually looking into Sikh a few days prior, and I had left an English translation of the Mool Mantra open, and I was sitting in front of my computer screen, and out of nowhere, like moments before I decided, yeah, I'm going to get up and end this thing, my computer screen swiped right out of nowhere, and there was the English translation of the Mool Mantra bold in my face, and the part that's really stuck with me was no fear, no hate. So, and that's what stopped me. Yeah, it's been a journey ever since. However,
So let me just tap in and say, so I didn't know that part, right? And I think that actually provides a lot of context for the parts of your story that I do know. I think it explains a lot, right? Because I think we came to Sikhi in very different places. And I can see like how, well, I'm going to let you tell your story, but I'm just saying like that provides a lot of context. It just kind of like lays the foundation and provides this new perspective for how the rest of your story unfolds. And so, and I get that as somebody who has had similar experiences and dealt with like suicidal ideation and stuff, I get that. And I don't know. I'm just like really like, as soon as you started saying it, because like I said, I've never heard it before, I was just like, oh man, I'm really proud that you can speak on that. It's tough to speak on. It's something I certainly don't talk about a lot, as much advocacy as I do. So I don't know, that says a lot about you. Anyways, go ahead.
Yeah, that's when I decided to, take Sikh seriously as something that, I'm going to do. Like, I'm a Sikh now. Like, it's a weird moment when you're like raised in a Christian family and raised to be nothing else but Christian. It takes a lot of unlearning. It's like, oh, I'm definitely going to hell now, kind of thing.
And it seems like, because for me, there was a 2-year gap between when I left Christianity and when I found Sikh, right? And so I think we also talk about a lot of times people even coming to Sikh but still having that same sort of mindset that comes with Christianity or that you get from Abrahamic religions or Western religion and stuff. And so I had that gap, and I think that's what helped me. But you're saying you didn't really have that gap. You didn't leave Christianity and then have this like gap. Like you kind of were just in a place where you were struggling, and then Sikh sort of, I don't know, I guess showed itself to you, or you sort of discovered it. And so it was a lot closer. So you didn't leave Christianity first, right?
No, it was literally back to back. At 12:14 a.m. I was a Christian. At 12:15 a.m. I was a Sikh, and it was just like that. And
and that is how it works, folks. There's no ritual, long drawn out process for deciding that you want to be a Sikh. That's not how it works. So yeah, that's exactly.
Yeah, you just decide to follow the Guru and you become a Sikh. It was weird because it was just like the fear of hell and damnation, but the love for Guru Nanak was stronger, and so that's what helped me get through that. But everybody starts in a honeymoon phase, where oh my God, we're just learning about this, new Sikh, and everything's so good to be true, and you're just in bliss, and then you get introduced to the community, and that kind of happened later for me because I live in Galveston, and at the time I was 17, I didn't have a driver's license, didn't have a car. And there's no Gurdwara, here in Galveston area. We have to go to like Sugarland, which is like South Houston. That's our nearest Gurdwara.
So you were 17. Were you in college already? Were you still in high school?
I was still in high school. I was was crossing over from junior year to senior year in high school.
Wow.
I hadn't even come out as gay yet. I came out as Sikh before I came out as gay.
Wow. Which
So-
we will get into this later, but I just want to let you know, as a black person from a Christian family, both are equally fear-inducing. We'll talk about that later. But
Terrifying. And guess what? You
Yeah.
know why? What made me come out of Sikh? I was watching Iyanla Fix My Life with two gay pastors who, and we were watching their story, and it was like, okay, I gotta fess up. And so I told my mama, I'm not Christian no more. But anyway, that's a different story for a different time. So we start off in this honeymoon phase, and I remember the first time that I went to the Gurdwara, you know, I went with my white friend, so it wasn't really that much of a. I didn't really experience that much of a, discrimination that we normally face. A lot of the stares that I were getting was like stares of interest and not stares of discrimination. Stares of, oh my God, look at this black person in a turban. He's so wow, and it kind of felt good because I'm actually in a space where people actually like think it's cool for me to be here, and so I think that's where it kind of starts, where you kind of feel like the beginning of tokenism, but you don't really notice that it's tokenism in the beginning. You just think that everybody's vibing and, they're taking a liking to you.
speaking of the honeymoon phase, now I want to talk a little bit more about that because I think I had a different experience in terms of like the honeymoon phase. I think I was trying to avoid the honeymoon phase, which is why I gave myself that like year period before I told anybody. But talking about the honeymoon phase, let's talk a little bit about why folks might not either initially recognize tokenism, or why they might sort of just accept it, why it happens, why it may even be encouraged, right? Why some marginalized people might be okay with tokenism, or at least on the surface, or at least in the beginning. And that is because tokenism, especially for marginalized people, it brings this sort of like dopamine, serotonin boost almost. These feelings of inclusion and validation, right? These feelings of acceptance, these feelings of all of the things that come with inclusion. But without true inclusion, it's not actually there. It means you don't always get to show up as your full self, right? You might show up, as long as you are showing up for the people who are tokenizing you, as long as you are showing up how they want you to show up, or in ways that fit their narrative, or that make them comfortable, or that don't push them too far out of their comfort zone, it's okay. But the moment parts of you show up, or you bring parts of you to the table that maybe make them a little uncomfortable, or kind of push them a little bit, or don't fit the narrative, then things start to change. So yeah, I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, but go back to your journey and like what happened next.
It's almost as if I dug my own hole with, with the content that I was releasing on my YouTube channel. They're just videos, kind of when I got out of my honeymoon phase and I was realizing that the Sikh community wasn't all that I had hoped it to be. And then there was just some very hypocritical, terrible things that were going on in the month. And I was just making videos, railing people, just this sucks, and this, that, and people were just digging it. And I was just like, yeah, people were like liking this. And I think the reason why it felt so good is because when you're coming into like a new faith where primarily the practitioners of that faith originate from the place where the faith was founded, there's kind of this like, they don't know how to separate the culture from the faith practice or from the spiritual tradition. And so it's like you automatically have more of yourself to prove when you're an outsider coming in. It's almost as if like, oh, we allowed you to be part of our religion, so you have to do this, this, and this, and this to be acceptable. And I feel like that was my way of doing that. Releasing that type of content on YouTube was my way of doing that. And then when people find out that, oh, well, he's not necessarily exactly what we hoped him to be, then they start treating you different immediately. I got my big boost, my big recognition as, the BLACKxSIKH when I made a video of me visiting Gurdwara Sahib of Breen. It was the same time where I mentioned, that same day that I mentioned that people were thinking that I was coming to steal from the Goluk because of what happened the previous week. That was the very same day that I recorded that video, and I posted that video on YouTube. And Rupan Bal, who was a friend of Just Rain and all that, he was one of the famous, Punjabi viners and YouTubers at the time. He saw my video and he reposted it on his channel, and it just blew up. And it was like overnight, everybody knew who Surma Singh was. I was getting messages from people all in India and Australia and the UK and all this stuff. And like, we think you're great. We think this is amazing. And it felt good because I felt less of having to prove myself. Like, yes, I'm actually a Sikh. but it comes with downsides.
I just want to say, like, there is that worry, right? Like, the same anxiety that I experienced going into that interview with Kat Black about, I have to get this right. Like, there's no room for error. There's no room to be slightly wrong. There's, like, you have to get it right. You have to be the best. You sort of have to prove it, not just to yourself, but definitely to other people in the community, because people are already kind of like looking at you side eye, right? Like, what do you know about this, right?
Right.
Or to this day, people are still trying to sort of like educate me as though I just got here. It's been, oh God, we're going, I think 10 years. We're coming up on 10 years for me.
I'm
right?
on
people
8.
are still,
Yeah.
Like, mind you, I'm on 8. I think I'm on 8 or I think I'm on 9 or something. But mind you, even when we posted the videos already, the videos that we've posted, we still got people in the comments like, well, if you need to learn anything about SIKH or if you need any advice, go here or go here or go there. And I'm like, sir, it's been 8 years. What do you like, sir? You know, and to be clear, I think that when you are born into a family, I saw this with Christianity, right? Where you had people who were born again Christians or who found Christianity later in life after a really hard struggle. And those are the people who are like the most intense. They're the ones at the altar. They're the ones shouting the loudest. They're the ones they're just in it, like in it to win it, right? Like,
right.
And I think that that's true for most converts. I see that with especially like a lot of Sikh, white Sikh converts at my ashram, at my Gurdwara here in LA, in Southern California. Like, I see it, right? There's this like intensity that comes with it. And I'm saying that to say that for people to still be trying to educate and mansplain the very basics of Sikhi to me, it's because there is this assumption that I don't know what I'm talking about, that I don't know what I'm doing, that I just got here, or that I'm cosplaying or something.
Right.
And so, yeah, getting that validation can feel so good. It's countering all of those other experiences and that doubt that you have.
Right.
Yeah, it feels good. I'd had a childhood and a lifetime of being tokenized against my will and like pushing back. And Storm and I have talked about this and how we responded to being tokenized as Sikhs or attempted tokenization as Sikhs differently. And I think that's because our lived experiences are different. Me growing up, having the experience of like constantly being tokenized, then going to an HBCU and finally being able to breathe.
Right.
It seemed like for the first time in my life, and relax and not have to constantly police myself because other people were not policing my blackness and things like that. That really helped, so that by the time I got to SIKH, when folks did try to tokenize me, it was like, nah, I see it. I see the playbook. I think I also had the benefit of being older. You know, I was already in my 20s, whereas like you were 17 and still a teenager in high school, which, first of all, the fact that you got there in high school is like, a black teenager in a Christian family, and you decided to convert. I don't know that y'all understand. We will get to this. We have this topic planned, but I do not know if y'all understand how major that is to be from a deeply Christian family and then decide so boldly, so bravely, so courageously that you are going to leave this faith and then practice another one as a teenager, not even a senior in high school yet, is wild.
I mean,
Sorma is wild. I don't know if I've emphasized that enough, because I don't think I realized like how young you were. I knew you were young, but I don't think I realized how young you were.
Very crazy.
So kudos to you.
Very crazy.
Okay, talk to us a little bit more about that. I just wanted to make mention of this culture versus religion and all that good stuff.
Right. It's very crazy at that age. I mean, and I'm from the Church of God in Christ, and if you don't know what that is, let's just say,
you did not say you were Kojic.
I was Kojic, like Church of God in Christ.
I gotta go. Sorry, can't do it. What do you mean Kojic? You didn't say that part, Sorma. We've been talking for how many years? You didn't say Kojic.
I mean, you can't just join it. You got to be born in it. This is the Church of God in Christ. Yeah, Kojic as mess. Coming into SIKH was really, really different, and it's the kind of like, there was no way for me to be tokenized when I was in the church, because we were just all black Christians, and you know, I mean, I guess I was kind of tokenized. We'll talk about that later in a different episode. But it was nowhere compared to what was happening in the SIKH. And it seemed okay in the beginning, but where I'm at currently right now in life, it did a lot of damage to my SIKH. A lot of damage to my SIKH, to the fact where reflecting back on, taking Amrit, and because, taking Amrit is like the next big step. Like if no one believes you're a Sikh now, like when you take Amrit, there's no denying that you're a Sikh.
Just so folks know, there's a lot of pressure. At least this has been my experience, and the other converts I've spoken to. There's a lot of pressure as a convert to go quote unquote all the way, which is to take Amrit, to be a baptized Sikh, and to do that, because if not, then you're not. Not everybody. Again, not everybody. But I'm saying that pressure does exist.
Right. And, it's come to the point where it just builds and builds. And it's come to the point where I don't even feel a connection to being Amritdhari anymore. Like I don't even live an Amritdhari lifestyle like that anymore. And there's reasoning behind that.
Okay, so we're going to wrap it up here, because this is something that we're going to talk about a good bit over time. I just wanted to really emphasize that the major problem with tokenism is that those feelings are feelings. There's not substance there, and they're not based on the whole truth. If the validation and the acceptance is based on the full you, your full self, your whole self, it's not tokenism, right? Because again, tokenism is the diversity without the actual inclusion, without being able to show up as your full self, without our differences being taken into consideration, without the different lived experiences, our different cultural backgrounds, our different beliefs and values and principles being taken into consideration and being honored, right? It's not actual inclusion, and those feelings won't last forever. Right? You will end up being exploited or discredited or weaponized, and often against your own best interests and against your own community, right? That happens a lot. You are being used for what you represent, not who you are. If they can just replace you with any other Black Sikh, that was never true inclusion. If they can just replace you with any other Black person, that's not true inclusion. If they would prefer you to be not Black, or they're just sort of accepting this part of you, they're just accepting the queerness, but they don't really, like, they're tolerating it but not accepting it, I should say. To be clear, they're tolerating it but not accepting it, because again, tolerance is the bare minimum. Tolerance is not something we should be striving for. Acceptance is what we should be striving for. Tokenism is what happens when you are being used for what you represent and not who you are. And we're not here for that. We're not doing that. I think a prime example is parents who love their kids until they find out they're gay, right? And it's like, do you love your child, like the child that you have, or do you love the idea of your child, of having a child, of being a parent, of having a mini you walking through the world carrying your last name, furthering your legacy? And like, is it ego or is it inclusion? And again, we'll talk about this more later. This is just part one of the tokenism conversation, and we will talk a little bit more about how to avoid tokenism, how to prevent tokenism. The bottom line is that true inclusion allows people to show up as their full selves. It recognizes their humanity and their personhood. And I do want to say this: if you have any experience being tokenized, either as the Black Sikh, the Black this, or the Black friend, or whatever, if you've been there, if you're there right now, come holla at us. We want to talk to you. We know what it's like. We have the experience. But we're trying to change it, because we want to be able to show up as our full selves. We want other Black people to be able to show up as their full selves. We want people to understand that Black people are not a monolith. We're going to wrap it up here. Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for going on this journey with us as we explore this intersection of culture and faith and Black and Sikh, and trying to navigate it and figure it out. It's a complex one, but I think it's worth talking about. I think it's worth exploring. And I really appreciate it. So this is Smalls, a co-host Sorma. We will talk to you when we talk to you. We'll see you when we see you on the internet streets. Peace, y'all.